So, we're talking about the coldest war toward a return to great power competition in the Arctic with a question mark. This is only this, and only one other presentation of Great Decisions has a question mark, because it's a fluid kind of thing right now, not static, not sure of what's happening and what's going to happen, more importantly. Has anybody been in the Arctic area? Okay, so some of you know what I'm talking about. Okay, I think of Arctic, I think of ice, right? Think the same of the Antarctic also. Has anybody been in the Antarctic? All right. They are two totally different areas in that the Arctic is an ocean covered by ice and surrounded by land. The Antarctic is a continent with a thick ice cap. It has a run of sea ice in the Southern Ocean. But a lot of the Arctic still is very cold. Now, I had my choice of presentations of what to do for this Great Decisions. And the Arctic drew me for two reasons. One, Santa lives at the North Pole. And number two, I was at the Arctic Circle in Iceland in 2018. So I thought, well, let's look into this. One other difference between Arctic and Antarctic. The Arctic is the Gulf Stream pushes warmer waters up towards those northern countries. However, in July 4th, 2019, Anchorage, Alaska, it was 90 degrees. We have had summer, lately the summers have been getting warmer in the Arctic countries. The Antarctic, however, stays a nice, even minus 18 Fahrenheit in the summer. Big difference. So, here's where Santa lives. It's very important to keep that in mind. Whoops. All right, that's the ship I took around Iceland. We circumnavigated Iceland on the Ocean Diamond. Holds about maybe 300 people max. It was delightful. I need to tell you how I got to this ship because it's fun. My travel partner and I were flying out of Norfolk, and thanks to United Airlines continuously delaying our flight, we got to Dulles Airport too late for our flight to Keflavik. So we got another, booked more tickets, found a hotel, the whole thing, showed up next day. I had called the travel company we were with. They said, we'll get you land transportation. Someone will meet you at the airport. Okay, so we landed at Keflavik, which is not a very big airport considering the vast number of people that go through it. And there was a nice man in a chauffeur's outfit with our names on the card. And we got in his nice car, and we had a 3-hour drive to our next port, which I can't pronounce. And the bill was $800 to show you how expensive things are in that part of the world. We pulled up to the pier in that little town, that little port, just to watch this ship leaving. And we went, oh no. Well, he called the tour company and back and forth. Turns out that it was just getting to be low tide, so the ship was mooring further on out. And they would send somebody for us. So they put us in a little store that was a combination travel agency, retail store, and cafe. Stuck our bags outside, said, here, sit at the table, somebody will come for you. Somebody came for us, and grabbed our bags, took us over to the dock, and there was our vessel, a black rubber Zodiac. I had never ridden in a Zodiac before. So we get into the Zodiac with our baggage and everything else, pull up to the back end of the ship, aft, and as we're pulling up, there are people up on the deck waving at us, cheering us on, and we became known. We were instantly famous. We were the two ladies who missed the boat through the whole cruise. So that was my introduction to getting to the Arctic. It was a wonderful tour. And there's my certificate saying that I was at the Arctic Circle. And if you look at the very top, there's the Arctic Circle. And again, we took one of those Zodiac boats over to the island of Grimsey, which is where the Arctic Circle crosses. Now, the Arctic Circle is not a static circle. It is not on the map as static. It moves about 40 feet a year. And it's dependent upon the tilt of the sun and of the moon and of the tides as to where it is. We pulled up to Grimsey, and there we saw this wall. There's Grimsey on the left, the island, and the wall of puffins. And puffins are adorable. They're all over the Arctic. And by the way, they used to be a chief source of food for the Icelandic people. There's the sign where you walk. There is an airport at Grimsey, and you keep walking along that black path till you come to this. And I can't find my picture of myself standing on that, but that's the Arctic Circle marker. It says that New York is about 4,000 kilometers in one direction, and Moscow is about 3,000 kilometers in the other direction. Now, the inhabitants have put up this 8-ton rolling ball because they want to mark the exact spot of where the Arctic Circle is. So we did not walk an extra few miles to see that. But they move it. I don't know how they move an 8-ton ball, but they do. And they said that by 2050, Grimsey will no longer be in the Arctic Circle because of the way the Earth is tilting. So I wanted to know the origin of the word Arctic, and in Greek, Arctos means bear. And the Big Bear and Little Bear constellations are always visible in the Arctic sky, and we know those as Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, or, as we were taught as kids, the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. So today, to outline where I'm going with this, we're going to talk about where we're talking about as far as the Arctic. Who's involved? What's happening? Why is it happening? Who are the major players, which turn out to be the United States, Russia, and China. Surprise, right? And then future concerns. Where is the Arctic? Well, of course, there's Santa's house right smack in the middle between N and P on the North Pole. And if you look at the amount of coastline all around of of the different countries, and of course, which country has the largest coastline begins with an R. And then you see Canada, you see Europe, Greenland. There's Iceland down at the bottom. Canada, and then we go on over, okay? So the Arctic Council was established in the year 1966. And the members of the Arctic Council are the United States because of Alaska, Canada, Denmark because of Greenland, Norway, Russia, Iceland, Sweden, Finland, and 6 organizations of indigenous peoples, which aren't necessarily confined to a country, and 2 are in Alaska, the Aleut and the Inuit. And if you want the list of the rest of them, I'll give them to you afterwards privately because I can't pronounce them. So they involve 30 million square kilometers, 8 countries, 3 continents. Now, there are more players that were added more recently. And they are non-Arctic states, and their status is observer. And look at the wide range here. And of course, with China right up on top. France, Germany, India, Italy, Japan, the Netherlands, Poland, Singapore, the Republic of Korea, Spain, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. They don't vote, but they pay attention to what's going on and want to have some input on issues that interest them. Now, why is there conflict over the Arctic? Well, there are a lot of claims over who owns what. What area is ours, what area is yours, where they intersect. There are a lot of environmental concerns, and I could do this whole presentation just on the environmental concerns alone. But global warming means that there has been melting sea ice. And there are tremendous effects on animals, plants, and people. Someone asked me if I was going to talk about the polar bears, and I'd love to talk about polar bears, but I don't have time to do all that. But enough to say that everyone and everything is being affected. 4 million people inhabit the area. There's conflict because of the shipping lanes that are very desirable and very needed. These big cargo ships out here, ships want better access to get from one place to the other, to get all those goods from one place to the other. And military defensive issues, of course, are always going to come up where you have territories. Also, there are issues of exclusive economic zones the country wants for fishing, for drilling, for mining rights. The area belongs to a country, 200-mile limit beyond the continental shelf, and this is so important that there's a United Nations Commission on the limits of the continental shelf. The Arctic has 13% of the undiscovered oil of the world. It has 30% of the undiscovered natural gas, and it has $1 trillion worth of gold and gem quality diamonds. I never thought about gold mining and diamonds in the Arctic until I read this. All right, the sea lanes. The ice is melting, opening up new sea lanes, and you're going to see that in a minute. I'm going to show you a video, which I meant to show you earlier and forgot. It's been a wonderful morning so far. Okay, so the ice is melting, opening up new sea lanes. We want shorter trade routes, everybody does. Fishing is important, and indeed there's concern that there's overfishing going on even now. Hydrocarbon exploitation and mining. So far, the Arctic is an area of peace. And they're looking at a possible third route over the pole by mid-century or sooner. So that's only like 30 years away. All right, so now I will show you the video that I meant to show earlier.
For all of recorded history, anyone seeking access to the vast, untapped riches of the Arctic has faced one key obstacle: ice. But the frozen North is no longer quite so frozen. As the polar ice cap retreats, the Arctic is becoming a focus for economic development and geopolitical rivalry. Great Decisions investigates the ambitions of Arctic powers, both old and new, and asks whether a spirit of cooperation can endure in one of the Earth's most inhospitable regions. The fight over the melting Arctic. Next on Great Decisions.
Great Decisions is produced by the Foreign Policy Association in association with Thomson Reuters. Funding for Great Decisions is provided by the Herford Foundation, PricewaterhouseCoopers LLP, and the Nelson B. Delavan Foundation.
The old mariners fought for the Northwest Passage because they believed it would prove a short commercial route between the East and the West. The route which Amundsen has located will be of considerable use to whalers, but it is unlikely that anything else will come of it. National Geographic Magazine, 1906.
By the time the Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen completed the first transit of the Northwest Passage, it was widely understood that Arctic shipping routes offered no commercial value. But now, more than a century later, the Arctic is changing.
In 2019, Anchorage, Alaska experienced the highest recorded temperature in the history of their state. If there's any pretense about us being in denial about climate change, all they have to do is look to Anchorage and understand that it's the honest-to-God truth.
In July of 2020, Arctic sea ice cover hit its lowest ever recorded level. Scientists are predicting in the next decade or so, we may start to see some ice-free summers.
Climate change is going to impact the Arctic and going to impact the conditions of navigation. It could shorten the trip from Asia to Europe. If instead of taking the south route, you could go north around Russia.
In 2016, the Crystal Serenity cruise ship became the largest passenger vessel to sail through the Northwest Passage. It sailed from Vancouver to New York.
We can cut here. Thank you. And back to the slides. So when I was in Iceland, we took a boat out on the lake to get closer to the glaciers. And our guide told us that in 10 years, that glacier was not expected to be there anymore. And we're also seeing some other things going on ecologically, like there are now those rubbish islands, like they're talking about in the Pacific. They're seeing them around Greenland and around the Barents Sea. So man is encroaching, and the climate is encroaching upon the Arctic. So our three players: USA, China, Russia. USA because of Alaska. Now Alaska, Texans don't like to admit it, but Alaska is our largest state. Alaska is the size of Texas, Montana, and Arizona combined. Alaska has more coastline than any other state in the Union. Our Arctic strategy of 2013 was stated as follows: that we wanted to advance the United States' security of interests. And of course, you know, we're very close to Russia because remember, Sarah Palin was able to see Russia from her kitchen window. We're to advance security interests, pursue responsible Arctic region stewardship, strengthen our international cooperation, safeguard peace and stability, consult and coordinate with Alaska natives, those Aleut and Inuit people, and consult and coordinate with Alaska natives. In 2013, the United States led the council, they were a chair, and they adopted an agreement on enhancing international Arctic scientific cooperation. In 2017, Finland was the chair, but the United States did not fill its seat on the council that year. In 2018, the Freedom of Navigation Operation, and I love the typical Navy acronym of FONOP, for along the Northern Sea route was proposed by the United States. 2019, Pompeo stated U.S.'s concern over Russia and China. And if you remember, in 2019, our former president proposed buying Greenland, and Denmark was not real happy about that. 2020, the United States decided to build a new fleet of icebreakers. And you drop to the bottom one, the problems with our icebreakers, that we have one medium icebreaker, which is relatively newer, and two heavy-duty ones. The Polar Star is 30 years old, and it cannibalizes the Polar Sea for parts. So the Polar Sea doesn't operate, so we have one medium icebreaker and one old heavy-duty icebreaker currently operate. In July 2020, the United States reopened its consulate in Nuuk, Greenland, which had been closed since 1953. Also, the State Department has appointed a United States coordinator for the Arctic region. In 2019, the Arctic Council could not reach a common agreement statement because the United States would not acknowledge global warming. All right, Russia. So Russia is underway with progressive remilitarization of the area where they did not have military bases before. They are putting new ones in. They have increased their military presence in the maritime areas between Greenland and Iceland, and if you've been up in that area, you know they're not very far apart, and Iceland and the United Kingdom, and they are not very far apart either. Russia wants to control vessels in the northern sea route, of course, what would you expect? Murmansk has a population of 300,000, and that port is ice-free all year long. And again, the Gulf, because of the Gulf waters coming up and the warming that goes on in the northern seas. So that's an important port for Russia. Russia wants to access natural resources, like everybody else, and they have built liquefied natural gas plant, two of them, LNGs, one in the Yamal Peninsula, with China investing money. Now, these are private enterprises. Governments are not involved, but you know with Russia and China, governments are involved. Another is underway on the Gadan Peninsula, and Europeans are also investing. Russia is losing ice. It needs to step up its defenses. In Siberia, the permafrost is melting. They are having extensive flooding. We think of Siberia as just this big wasteland, but it's got cities, and people live there and work there, and neighborhoods with the flooding are just falling into the river because of the permafrost melting. And Russia has the world's largest fleet of major icebreakers. Now, I wanted to show you those two peninsulas, the Yamal Peninsula and the Gadan Peninsula. You see the Kara Sea and the Barents Sea. And if we go back to our map, you can see on the right sort of across from where it says ice cap, there's those two peninsulas. You can get a location of where those are. Now, China calls itself a near Arctic state. I've been in China, and I've been in Mongolia. We were nowhere near the Arctic. Just take a look at the map. I mean, there's a whole lot of Russia up above Mongolia before you ever get to the Arctic. China is 5,000 miles by sea from the Bering Strait. It has outlined a polar Silk Road economic plan, however. And their plan is full of talking about peaceful kinds of things that they want to do. I was able to access it and read it, and it was very interesting. You've heard about the Belt and Road Initiative in China in last year's Great Decisions presentations. And you'll probably hear about it again more in coming presentations. They have been building polar-capable ships since 2016. Reason being, Shanghai to German ports is almost 3,000 miles shorter via the northern route than using the Suez Canal. And I'm sure you're aware of the news item about the Suez Canal. One of these big cargo ships is stuck in the Suez Canal right now, and all these ships are backed up on both sides, and nobody can go anywhere. Trevor Noah said everybody's on their Waze app looking for different ways out, but nobody's going anywhere. China is investing heavily in Arctic nations as they allow. There is a joint venture in Russia and China on the Yamal Peninsula that I mentioned. It has 2 icebreaker research vessels and also has research stations in Iceland and Norway. In March 19, the European Union formally declared Beijing a strategic rival. So being that they're very aware of what China is intending to do. The Central and the Eastern European countries are more open to China investments than are the Arctic Council countries, those 8 that I showed you at the beginning. However, many Arctic countries are in dire need of job prospects and infrastructure. If they would accept, and you know how China works. China comes in and says, hey, you need a bridge, you need a road, you need a power station. We will lend you the money at very good, attractive rates so you can have these things. And then suddenly they find themselves indebted to China. And any economic interest could switch to military interest very quickly. Now, the United States' response to China. In 2018, there was a summit at NATO, and a new Joint Forces Command in Norfolk was established, and with that Joint Force and Second Fleet to be focused on the Arctic. In 2019, the United States is defending the nation's strategic influence in the Arctic with its first exercise in Arctic waters in decades. The challenge is that we are talking about China and Russia, and China has very long-term policy views as opposed to the short-term view. Also, someone wrote that when you are playing with China or working with China, it's like you're in a hockey game, only they have no rules and no penalty box. So, our future concerns: the melting of the ice cap, the competition for the trade routes in the Northern Passage, military establishments, scientific research, ecological concerns, China and or Russia, and economic development. And I have one more major concern that I'm going to show you right now. So I'm happy to take questions at this point, and I thank you for your kind attention. Eileen? Wait, he'll bring you a mic.
The city, I'm going to mispronounce it, Murmansk?
Yeah,
Is that on the Russian coast?
Russia.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
300,000 people, yes. Like Norfolk, about.
I don't know quite how to phrase this. So the Arctic it's not a country, or, I mean, I know
It's an ocean covered by ice,
okay.
So surrounded by land.
Central government anywhere there, a central Arctic government.
No, that's why they have the Arctic Council with those 8 countries that belong to it, because there's no land.
Right.
The Arctic is not land.
So like when Russia built something, China built something, whatever, do they have to get permission from somebody?
China and Russia were working together. So yes, those governments would agree to give permission to build those things. Just like no one could come into Alaska and start building something without a process of approval, I would imagine.
So they own parts of the Arctic? China and Russia and us and...
All 8 nations, let me go back to the map. It's too fast for this clicker there. All 8 nations. There's Russia, Finland, Norway, Denmark by way of Greenland, Canada, the United States by way of Alaska. Who did I not mention? And Iceland by way of its Grimsey Island. Those are all own land within the latitude of about 63 degrees of the Arctic Circle.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And why do you not consider Russia a major player?
Yes, we do. I talked about that Russia is one of the 3 major players. The United States, Russia, and China, even though China is, quote, near Arctic country, are major players in this?
Hi, Rosemarie.
Hi, Stu.
One of the interesting statistics I had run across is that for years, obviously, the Panama Canal was the main way of getting from China and the West into the eastern coast of the United States and Europe.
Right.
The Arctic is 5,000 miles closer than using the Panama Canal.
Yes.
And in addition, the Panama Canal cannot handle the size of some of the ships that go through the Arctic. So
Yeah,
the Panama Canal may eventually become rather not useless, but
obsolete,
less important.
Well, you know, the Panama Canal had the Panamax ships. They widened it for the Panamax ships, and they've widened it again. But I don't know what they've widened it to now. Do you know that? Okay. And by the way, that's a lovely trip to go through the Panama Canal. I really enjoyed that. So even just for the pleasure, let's keep it open.
Didn't the Chinese build the Panama Canal, the new one? Weren't they behind it? I thought they were. Am I right?
I don't know anything about that. If anyone knows anything about that, appreciate an answer. I don't know if the Chinese were involved in the building of the widening again the Panama Canal. I don't know. You can research that, Mary, and let us know.
Along those lines, it is a fact that when China offers economic development, they bring their own people in. It doesn't help the locals in any way, except that they're then indebted to China.
Good point. Are we done? Thank you. I appreciate that some of you had questions.
Thank you, everyone, for coming, and don't forget, next week will be Skip Roberts on the Korean Peninsula. Thanks again, and thank you very, very much, Rosie, for wonderful presentation.